Last Thursday, the light in the hallway outside our bedroom flickered 3 times before going out completely. I remember that so clearly because I had just opened the door, carrying a tray with 2 bowls of Rachel's favorite soup, chicken tortilla with extra lime. She texted earlier that she wasn't feeling well and had come home early from her networking lunch. But what I saw when I stepped in wasn't my wife resting in bed. The window was open. Wind was pushing the curtain like it was trying to escape. And the bed, the one we bought together on a rainy Tuesday 4 years ago, after arguing in an IKEA parking lot, was a mess. Not slept-in kind of mess. Torn apart, used, frenzied kind of mess. I stood there, the tray in my hands, feeling like something inside me had quietly snapped. Something didn't match. Rachel's car was in the driveway. The bathroom light was on, but the whole place felt off. I could hear the distant hum of the fan, and then, behind the bathroom door, came a sharp, muffled laugh. A man's laugh. I didn't move. I didn't knock. I walked out, left the tray on the kitchen counter, and sat in my car with the engine off, staring at the neighbor's house for 43 minutes. The next morning, Rachel acted like nothing happened. No explanation for the laugh, no mention of feeling better. She asked if I could run to the store for oat milk. Oat milk. The mundanity of it almost made me laugh. I stared at her for a beat too long, and she tilted her head, smiling with that sugary smile that always felt slightly off, like a mask a second too tight. I drove to the store but didn't go in. I sat in the parking lot of a gas station, pretending to scroll through my phone. Instead, I opened her cloud account on my laptop. I knew her password. I'd never used it before, but that morning my hands moved faster than my brain. There they were, photos. A screen full of blurry, intimate photos. Not explicit, but personal enough to suck the air out of my lungs. A man's watch on our dresser. A shirt that wasn't mine hanging off the back of a chair. A reflection in the mirror that showed 2 shadows. Tangled. Close. I stared at those photos with a strange stillness. No rage. No tears. Just this rising pressure in my ears, like the world had tilted sideways and all the blood was rushing to the wrong places. That night I said nothing. I placed the oat milk on the counter and went to bed before she came into the room. I listened as she brushed her teeth, as she shut the door, as she slipped under the covers beside me. She even whispered good night. I said nothing back. The next morning I installed cameras. Small, discreet, motion-activated. 1 in the living room, 1 in the hallway, 1 near the back door. She left the house at noon for her Pilates class. At 12:46 p.m., a man walked into my house with a key. A key. He didn't sneak. He didn't creep. He walked in like he lived there, tossed his shoes off, opened the fridge, drank my orange juice from the bottle. And then, less than 10 minutes later, my stepson came home early from school. My stepson walked in without warning and saw everything. What he saw, what he said afterward, how Rachel reacted, what happened next. That's where things start to unravel so violently it still makes my head spin that he was supposed to be at his friend Tyler's until dinner. That's what Rachel told me. Josh has a group project, she'd said, flipping her hair like she was bored by her own lie. They'll be working on it all afternoon. But Josh, my stepson, 15, sharper than most adults I know, had forgotten his charger. And because he's the kind of kid who actually charges his devices before they hit 0, he took the shortcut through the woods, came in through the back door, and found himself standing in our living room face to face with a man he'd never seen before. The man was shirtless, wearing jeans, barefoot, holding a soda can. Josh described it like he was reading out loud from a police report. His voice didn't shake when he told me later, but his hands did. He said the man looked confused at first, like he was the one who'd been walked in on. Then Rachel came out of the bedroom, our bedroom, wearing one of my shirts, her hair wet. And that's when Josh said he just turned around and walked right out the door. Didn't say a word. Didn't ask a question. Just walked. He didn't go to Tyler's. He didn't go back to school. He walked 3 miles to the strip mall near the highway and waited. He called me at 4:12 p.m. "Hey, can you come pick me up?" he said, trying way too hard to sound normal. "I'm at that place with the frozen yogurt." I didn't ask why. I just went. We didn't talk on the drive home. But when we pulled into the driveway, he finally said, "I think you already know." I nodded. He got out of the car and went to his room. Rachel wasn't home. Her car was gone. But there was a note on the counter. Went to get groceries. Back soon. XO. The XO was underlined. I took a screenshot of the camera footage. Sent it to her with no caption. 10 minutes later, she walked through the front door like nothing had happened. Grocery bags in one arm, phone in the other. She looked up, saw me, and instantly her smile twitched. Hey, you're home early. I didn't speak. I showed her the phone. She stared at the screen for a full 5 seconds, blinked slowly, then said, "This is so out of context." Out of context. That's what she chose to go with. "He was just helping me fix the sink," she said. "You're being paranoid." "He walked in with a key. I dropped mine last week. He had an extra from when he helped with the patio." "You never told me about a patio guy." She paused, blinked again. Then the expression on her face changed, like a curtain being pulled back. She wasn't scared. She wasn't ashamed. She was annoyed. "Oh my God, are we really doing this?" she snapped. "You're going to throw a fit because some guy helped me out while you were off being emotionally unavailable and boring?" That word, boring, hit me harder than anything else. That was the moment I realized she wasn't sorry. She wasn't panicking, begging, trying to deny. She was looking at me like I was the problem, like I had ruined her day. Behind her, Josh stood in the hallway, watching silently. She didn't even glance his way. And then she said, "You're being dramatic. This doesn't have to be a thing. You're just insecure." I didn't yell. I didn't touch her. I just walked past her, went into the garage, grabbed a suitcase and started packing. She followed me in, arms crossed, spitting insults like it was a game she'd played before. "You're seriously going to run away? Like a little kid? Grow up, Jake." I kept packing. That's when she changed tactics. Got quieter, colder. "If you leave, don't expect to come back." I zipped the suitcase shut, looked her in the eyes for the first time in what felt like a year. "I'm not coming back." Josh stayed with me that night. We got a cheap motel room with a broken AC unit and slept under a humming ceiling fan. Neither of us said much. But just before he turned off the light, he said, "She's not who you think she is." He was right. And the worst part? I think I always knew. The next morning, I woke up to 5 missed calls and a string of texts from Rachel, each one more deranged than the last. 8:12 a.m. "We need to talk. You're blowing this out of proportion." 8:27 a.m. "I'm sorry you feel hurt, but this isn't just about you." 8:45 a.m. "Josh needs stability. Don't drag him into this." 9:06 a.m. "If you want a war, Jake, I swear to God, I will bury you." And finally, 9:22 a.m. "Forget the house. I changed the locks." That last one made me laugh, not because it was funny, but because the timing was almost too perfect. She wasn't even trying to hide her switch from "we can talk this through" to scorched earth divorce mode. It was like she had a playbook and just flipped pages. I turned to Josh, still asleep under the thin motel blanket, earbuds in. I let him sleep. He didn't ask to be in this mess. I went out, sat in the car and called my lawyer. Rachel and I had never talked about prenups. She always scoffed at the idea when it came up with friends. "If you need a contract, you're not in love," she used to say. Romantic in theory, stupid in practice. Luckily, most of the house and business paperwork was in my name. But still, she could make this ugly. And with Josh involved, it already was. By noon, Rachel was calling from a different number. She'd blocked mine and started reaching out through her sister, her mother, even our dog's vet. Each message was a different version of her. Victim, manipulator, martyr. She told her mom I had abandoned the family. Told her sister I was emotionally abusive. Told the vet, and I'm not making this up, that I'd stolen the dog out of spite. I hadn't even seen the dog. But then came the real kicker. While I was out getting lunch with Josh, somewhere quiet, trying to distract him with fries and small talk, I got a call from my neighbor Alan. He sounded nervous. "Hey, Jake. Listen, I wasn't going to say anything, but Rachel had a guy over today. Again. He parked in your spot. They were on the patio for a while, real close. Then they went inside." This was less than 24 hours after she'd claimed she wanted to repair things. I didn't tell Josh. I just nodded through the rest of lunch, keeping it together. But later that evening, we got back to the motel room and there was a voicemail waiting on my burner line. A recording I'll never forget. It was Josh's friend's mom, Sharon. She sounded shaken. "Hi, Jake. I wasn't sure if I should call, but Josh told my son something today at school, and it's been bothering me. He said his mom told him she's going to say you hit her, that she's going to take everything. I don't know if it's true, but I thought you should know." I sat there for a long time, holding the phone in my hand like it was radioactive. I couldn't move. She was going to lie. She was already preparing her story. Her role as the abused, discarded wife, backed into a corner by the cruel husband. That night, Josh asked if we were going back to the house. "No," I said. "She's not our home anymore." The war wasn't coming. It had already started. And Rachel, sweet, charming, laugh-like-bells Rachel, was no longer pretending to be my wife. She was becoming something else entirely. The office was cold. Not physically. The AC was fine, the leather chairs soft, the walls painted in those neutral tones designed to keep you calm. But cold in the way a morgue is cold. Clinical, quiet, full of things that used to be alive. Rachel walked in 13 minutes late, wearing a white blouse I'd never seen before and jeans so tight they looked uncomfortable. No ring, no shame. She sat down across from me and smiled. Not the kind of smile you give someone you love, but the kind you wear when you're about to win something. Her lawyer, a slick guy in a navy suit with the personality of a parking ticket, opened with the usual, "We're hoping for an amicable process." I didn't respond. Mine just nodded, handed over a preliminary packet, and said nothing. We'd already planned this. I didn't need to speak yet. Rachel tapped her nails on the table, already annoyed by the silence. "Can we just be adults about this?" she said. "There's no reason to make it messy." My lawyer spoke for me. "We agree, but we need to address the false claims." Rachel blinked. "What false claims?" He slid a paper across the table. It was a printed transcript of Sharon's voicemail, word for word, dated, time-stamped. Rachel stared at it, her face unreadable. For the first time, she didn't have a line ready. Her lawyer leaned in, glanced at it, then looked back at her. She smiled, tight, almost convincing. "That's gossip. You're really basing your case on playground rumors now." My lawyer didn't react. He took out a second envelope. "This is a sworn affidavit from Sharon, and another from her son, and from Josh." Now she flinched. Her smile cracked. "You dragged my son into this?" she hissed. "My son." She only called him that when she wanted to weaponize him. "He came to us," my lawyer said calmly. "He said he felt unsafe." That broke her. Not in the way I hoped, no guilt, no remorse, but in the way a losing gambler starts flipping the table. "You're pathetic," she spat at me. "You think turning everyone against me makes you the hero in this? You abandoned your family. You humiliated me." I said nothing. I just watched, because that was the moment I saw it clearly, the performance, the delusion, the pure, blazing entitlement. She really believed she was the victim, that her lies were justified, that I was ruining her life by refusing to play along anymore. "I gave you 10 years, she snarled, standing now. 10 boring, thankless, dry years. And what did I get? A husband who never noticed when I was drowning." Her lawyer gently touched her arm. "Rachel, let's just—" "No," she snapped, yanking away. "Let him hear it. He should know." She turned to me. "I cheated, Jake. I cheated because you made it easy. You're not a man, you're a robot in khakis. You want to blame me? Fine. But you were never really in this. You just showed up. You were just there." I sat back in my chair. "You done?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I stood, slid the packet of evidence across the table, and looked her dead in the eyes. "I was there when your dad died. I was there when you crashed the car and couldn't sleep for weeks. I was there through the panic attacks, the therapy, the promotions, the damn sushi phase. I was there for every version of you, even the ones that didn't like me much." She didn't blink. "But this," I pointed at the mess on the table, the lies, the threats, the wreckage. "This version? I'm not staying for this one." She didn't say a word as I walked out. Her lawyer called after mine, tried to regroup, said we could revisit mediation. But I was already in the elevator, already breathing again. Outside, Josh was waiting in the car. He didn't ask how it went. "She said anything to you?" I asked. He nodded once. She told me you'd try to turn me against her. And I told her she did that all by herself. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. But Rachel wasn't done. She wasn't finished losing. Next, she came after my business. It started small, subtle, like mold creeping in under the wallpaper, invisible until it starts to rot the structure underneath. 2 days after the lawyer meeting, I got a call from my client in Austin. He sounded tense, like someone else was in the room. "Hey Jake, weird question. Did you mean to give your wife access to our billing system?" My stomach dropped. "No," I said immediately. "Why?" She called. Said she was taking over communications temporarily. Wanted full access to the project files. I thanked him, apologized, told him to ignore anything coming from her, and hung up. But that was just the tip. By that afternoon, 3 more clients reached out, all confused, all asking about Rachel. Somehow, she'd gotten her hands on my client list, email templates, even a few internal passwords. She was reaching out, introducing herself as a partner, saying I was stepping back for personal reasons. I rushed home. Well, not home. The Airbnb I'd been renting since I left the house, and tore through my backups, my accounts. She hadn't just hacked me. She'd walked right through the front door. She still had access to my shared drive, and I had forgotten to revoke it. That night, I changed every password I had, called every client personally, and drafted an official statement. But the damage was already taking root. One long-term contract froze. Another pulled back, citing instability concerns. She hadn't just taken a swing at me. She'd sunk her nails into the foundation of everything I'd built. But then came the email. From her. Subject: "You brought this on yourself. No greeting. No sign-off. Just 4 sentences. You wanted war? Congratulations. You just declared it. This was never about the affair. It's about the fact that you don't get to walk away clean. You will lose everything, starting with that precious little company." I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I was surprised, but because I realized something deeper. She was enjoying this. The affair was a symptom. The lies, the manipulation, the gaslighting, all tools. What she really wanted was power, control. She didn't want me to crawl back. She wanted me to bleed out. So I bled, but I bled smart. First, I hired a forensic IT guy. Not just your average help desk tech. This was a cybersecurity specialist who used to do contract work for a government agency. I gave him access to everything. In less than 48 hours, he sent me a report. Timestamps, logins, exact sessions where Rachel accessed files, copied data, sent unauthorized messages. He even tracked a remote session she'd made from my own office laptop, the one I stupidly left behind in the house when I left. Next, I filed a cease and desist through my lawyer. Then, I escalated formal civil complaint. Unauthorized access. Interference with business. The works. Her response? Another email. "Wow. Lawyer boy now? Cute. Go ahead. Burn your money." No denial. No apology. Just mockery. But I wasn't interested in playing anymore. I documented everything. Got affidavits from every client she contacted. Submitted the forensic report. Lined up everything in perfect order. No emotion, no accusations, just facts. And then I served her. I made sure the papers were delivered during her brunch with her friends at that bougie avocado toast place she loved. According to the server I tipped to text me. She turned purple. Rachel called that night. For the first time since this entire nightmare began. Her voice cracked. "You're really doing this? To me?" I said nothing. "You're seriously going to humiliate me in court over some emails?" I let the silence stretch until it hurt. Then I said, "You broke into my life. I'm just changing the locks." Click. But just when I thought the fire was starting to die down, she threw gasoline on it again. This time with a letter she sent to Josh's school. "You want to talk betrayal?" It came in a manila envelope, unmarked, shoved into Josh's locker at school. A handwritten letter, 3 pages long, sloppy cursive, no signature. But it didn't need one, we both knew who wrote it. Josh found it between periods, tucked between his physics book and a school flyer. He didn't read all of it at first, just enough to get the gist. Then he crumpled it and tossed it in his backpack, where it stayed until he got home and wordlessly dropped it in my lap. "Thought you should see it," he said. Then he went to his room and shut the door. I uncrumpled it, sat at the kitchen table, read it 3 times. It wasn't just manipulative. It was poison dressed up as concern. The letter opened like this: Josh, I don't know who you're listening to these days, but you need to understand the full story. Your stepfather has been lying to you. He's not who you think he is. The rest was a carefully scripted avalanche of deflection, blame shifting, and outright fiction. According to Rachel's version, I had emotionally abused her for years, isolated her from her family, and the final insult, planted evidence to make her look unfaithful. She even claimed the man Josh saw in the house that day was an old friend, helping her through a panic attack. But she saved the real venom for me. She called me controlling, cold, and toxic. Said I'd twisted Josh against her because I couldn't stand not being the favorite parent. The entire thing was a masterclass in psychological warfare, but what scared me wasn't the lies. It was the fact that she sent it to him, 15-year-old, a kid already trying to hold himself together in the middle of a nuclear divorce, who hadn't asked to pick sides but was being forced to read his mother's manipulations disguised as truth. I showed the letter to my lawyer immediately. He added it to the growing file, but I could tell even he was stunned by the move. You think she's trying to bait him into responding? He asked. She doesn't care if he does, I said. She just wants him confused. That night, Josh didn't come out of his room. I knocked once, twice. No answer. On the 3rd try, he cracked the door just enough for me to see his face. He looked tired, like something in him had aged 10 years in a week. I don't want to talk about it, he said. I just want to know if it's true. I shook my head. None of it is. He stared at me for a long second. Then he nodded and shut the door again. The next morning, I found the letter torn into 16 perfect squares, floating in the toilet. Josh flushed it himself, but the damage lingered. The school counselor called later that week. Just wanted you to know, she said gently. Rachel's trying to schedule a meeting with our family liaison. She's saying you're emotionally destabilizing Josh. There it was again. The same pattern. Rewrite reality, plant seeds, force reactions. This time I didn't wait. I drove straight to the school, brought in copies of the letter, laid out the timeline, even played part of the voicemail from Sharon. By the end of the meeting, the staff's tone shifted from concerned neutrality to something more serious, protective, like they'd finally seen through the fog she'd been spraying everywhere. Rachel was blocked from solo meetings at the school that day. She didn't know it yet, but the counselor promised me I'd be informed the second she tried to contact staff without me present. But I knew Rachel. This wasn't her giving up. This was her regrouping, and she didn't wait long, because the next thing she tried, she went after my mother. You think this is wild already? I hadn't spoken to my mother about the details. She knew Rachel and I had split. She knew I was staying with Josh, sorting out lawyers, navigating chaos. But I hadn't told her about the affair, the business sabotage, or the letter to Josh. I didn't want to drag her into it. She's 67, lives alone, runs a cozy antique shop in a quiet little town 2 hours away. She's not built for this kind of warfare. Rachel didn't care. I was at the grocery store picking up dinner when the call came. My mom's name popped up. I answered on the second ring, and before I could even say hello, she said, "Why is Rachel at my store?" I froze. What? She just walked in. No warning. She's standing by the front counter right now. I could hear the tension in her voice, the way she was trying to stay calm. I told her to put me on speaker and let me talk to Rachel. My mother said, "Jake wants to speak with you." And then came Rachel's voice. Saccharine, smug, like this was some kind of surprise party. "Hi, Jake. Thought I'd drop in. Your mother and I haven't talked in ages." I kept my voice low and even. "You need to leave. Now." "Oh, don't be dramatic. I'm just here to clear up a few misunderstandings. I mean, she deserves to know what's really happening. Don't you think?" I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth hurt. "You show up at her place uninvited again, I will file a restraining order. And you will not like how that plays out." A pause. Then she said, "Tell Josh I said hi." And the call cut. I called my mother privately afterward. She said Rachel stayed for about 5 minutes, made small talk, and then casually mentioned she felt unsafe and wasn't sure who to trust anymore. My mother, bless her, played it polite but cold. Didn't give her anything. But the message was clear. Rachel was trying to paint a picture. She wanted someone, anyone, to believe there was another side to this. That maybe she was the one who'd been betrayed. That maybe I was the one twisting the story. And if she could cast doubt in my own family, that was a bonus. But she didn't count on one thing. My mom's not stupid. Later that night, I got a text from her. She's dangerous. You need to finish this. I already knew that. But reading it from the woman who raised me, the woman who once told me Rachel had fire in her eyes, the kind that burns you if you're not careful. It lit something inside me I hadn't felt in weeks. Resolve. This wasn't just about divorce anymore. This was about reputation, safety, sanity. So I started making moves. My lawyer filed a temporary protective order the next morning. We attached a declaration about the uninvited visit to my mother's business, the forged business communication, the letter to Josh. The judge didn't hesitate. Restraining order granted. Rachel was served at her gym, and that was no accident. We made sure it was public. She went ballistic. Blew up my phone with burner numbers, voicemails, emails titled, "This is not over." She was right. It wasn't over. Because the next hearing, the custody review, was just around the corner. And Rachel suddenly had a new plan. She wanted full custody of Josh. Even though he wasn't biologically mine. Even though she hadn't cared about parenting him for the past 5 years. Even though he was begging to stay with me. She was going to use him as a bargaining chip. She wanted leverage. What she didn't realize. Josh was about to testify. And what he said in that courtroom changed everything. The courtroom wasn't grand like you see in movies. Just a beige box with low ceilings, fluorescent lighting, and folding chairs that creaked when you shifted your weight. But for Josh, it may as well have been an arena. He wore a navy polo and jeans. Clean, plain, not trying to make a statement. He looked smaller in that chair next to the court-appointed guardian. But when the judge asked if he was comfortable speaking, he said yes without hesitation. Rachel sat at the opposite table, her expression carefully rehearsed. Soft jaw, watery eyes, a tissue clutched like it might turn the tide. Her lawyer had already spun a narrative of a fractured bond between Josh and me, citing alienation, neglect, and a total lack of biological connection, as if DNA made you a father. When the judge asked Josh why he wanted to live with me, he took a moment. Then he said, "Because he listens to me. Because he's the only one who's never lied to me." Rachel's eyes flicked up. You could almost hear the script tearing in her head. The judge nodded. "Can you give us an example?" Josh didn't even look at her. "I saw what I saw. A man in our house. With her. She told me I imagined it. Then she said he was a friend. Then she said it never happened. I'm 15. I'm not stupid." There was silence. The kind that seems to weigh 10 pounds heavier when it's full of truth. "She sent me a letter at school. Tried to make me think my stepdad was the problem. But he never said anything bad about her to me. Not once. I just figured it out on my own." Rachel shifted in her seat, eyes darting toward the judge, then her lawyer, who sat frozen. Her mask cracked then, just a flicker. Enough to show the ugly underlayer of panic, disbelief, resentment. The judge asked, "Has he ever hurt you?" Josh shook his head. "Never. Ever threatened you? Tried to turn you against your mom?" Another headshake. "He tried not to say anything. I asked. He wouldn't talk bad about her. He let me see things for myself." "And your mother?" Josh hesitated this time. Just a second. Then, "She scares me when she lies, because she makes it sound like she believes it. And she gets mad when I don't." Rachel stood up. "Objection!" Her lawyer barked, trying to reel her in. "He's just a child." But the judge waved them off. "He's allowed to speak. You asked for full custody. This is part of that request." Josh went quiet again. The room felt heavy. Finally, he said softly, "She only wants me now because she's losing." That was the blow that shattered the room. Rachel turned red, not embarrassed, but furious. Her voice cut through the space like a blade. "He's brainwashed. You've poisoned him. He's mine. I raised him." The judge banged the gavel. "That's enough. Sit down." She didn't. "He's a child. He doesn't know what he's saying." But she looked desperate now, not righteous. Her lip curled, and for a second, Her entire body looked like it was rejecting reality. Like she'd rehearsed every scenario except the one where the kid told the truth. The judge called for a break. Rachel stormed out of the courtroom without looking back. Josh didn't move, just sat there, like the gravity had drained out of his limbs. I reached for his hand, but he pulled his phone out instead, opened it, showed me something. It was a voicemail, from Rachel, from 2 nights earlier. If you don't get your head straight before the hearing, you're gonna find out what real disappointment feels like. No threats, but all the venom in the world. My lawyer added it to the evidence packet. After recess, the judge reconvened and issued a temporary placement order. Josh would remain in my custody until final determination. Rachel was to have supervised contact only. A court liaison would oversee all future communication. Rachel didn't come back to the courtroom. Her lawyer packed up her things in silence. Outside, Josh stood in the sunlight for a long moment, breathing like he'd been underwater for days. "I don't think she ever loved me," he said quietly. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that somewhere deep down she did. But I didn't lie to him. Not now. Not after all this. "I think she loved the idea of being a mother," I said. "Not the work of being one." He nodded. We got in the car and drove home. For once, no calls, no emails, no traps. But the calm didn't last long. Rachel was quiet, yes, because she was preparing her final move. The one where she tried to sell the house. Behind my back. It was a Tuesday when the email landed in my inbox. A notification from a real estate site I hadn't signed up for. The subject line read, "New activity detected on your property." First, I thought it was spam. Then I clicked the link. There it was. Our house. Photos freshly uploaded. Listing live. Status: for sale by owner. And the listed contact? Rachel. No mention of me. No co-owner approval. No signatures. Just her name and a throwaway email address I didn't recognize. I stared at the screen, not blinking. My name was still on the deed. The mortgage was in my name. She couldn't sell it. Not legally. But Rachel didn't care about legally. She cared about chaos. And she'd just launched her final storm. I called the realtor listed as the inquiry contact. Pretended to be a buyer. When she answered, I asked if I could view the property. She said she was handling inquiries directly for the seller. A lovely woman, recently divorced, trying to move on. I asked, "What about the co-owner?" Silence. "I wasn't told there was one," she said. Of course she wasn't. Rachel was trying to sell the house under the radar, flipping it fast before the divorce wrapped so she could walk away with the cash. I hung up and drove straight to the courthouse. My lawyer was already ahead of me. She'd seen the listing too. Someone from the title office flagged it. Rachel had tried to forge a sale authorization form. Her signature was real. Mine was traced. Sloppy. Almost insulting. We filed an emergency injunction. The house was locked down by the court. Any transfer, listing, or sale attempt was frozen. When Rachel got served with the notice, she showed up at my office. Not the front desk. My private entrance. She waited until someone held the door open and slipped inside like a shadow. I came out of my meeting and found her in the hallway, arms folded, smiling like she was proud of herself. "Thought you'd be impressed," she said. "You always said I was good at strategy." I told her she had 30 seconds to leave or I'd call security. "You think you've won," she said, stepping closer. "You think you've proven something. But all you did was drag me through hell. You embarrassed me. You humiliated me. You poisoned my son against me. You're not a man. You're a vindictive little coward hiding behind lawyers." I didn't flinch. "You tried to sell a house you don't own," I said calmly. "You wrote a letter to a kid to manipulate him. You lied to my clients, my mother, the court. You're not a victim, Rachel. You're a walking fire alarm begging for attention." That one hit. Her face tightened. Then she leaned in and whispered, "You'll never be rid of me." Security came 2 minutes later. She didn't resist. Just walked out like she was in control. Like she was the one doing me a favor. The next morning, the real estate listing was gone. Scrubbed. Her burner email deleted. But I knew what this meant. Rachel was out of moves. And when someone like her runs out of moves, they do one last thing. They burn the stage. They take the wreckage and make it your problem. The final hearing was scheduled. The divorce would be settled. The assets divided. Josh's guardianship finalized. But Rachel had one more thing to say, and she said it in front of the entire courtroom. The final hearing wasn't supposed to be dramatic. It was a formal wrap-up, signatures, confirmations, allocation of assets. The kind of proceeding where the court clerk yawns behind her screen and the lawyers check their watches. Josh wasn't required to attend. My mother stayed home. I wore a gray suit I hadn't touched since my last best friend's wedding. Rachel arrived 10 minutes late. Not flustered, not frantic, composed. She walked in wearing a sleek black dress like it was a movie premiere. Not a courtroom. Not a trace of nervous energy. Just poise and that unnerving half-smile she used to save for when she wanted something very badly. The judge began the session. My lawyer ran through the final division. House retained by me. Business protected. Josh's guardianship formalized under my name with supervised contact for Rachel pending review. Rachel had agreed on paper. Then she stood up. "Your Honor," she said, "I'd like to make a closing statement." My lawyer tensed. The judge, caught slightly off guard, asked if it was relevant to the proceeding. Rachel insisted it was. She stepped forward, took her time, looked around the room like she was about to deliver a toast at a wake. Then she launched into a speech not to the court. "To me. I was 23 when I met you," she began. "And at first I thought you were everything I wanted. Safe, predictable, boring, yes, but stable. And I needed that." Her voice was steady, artificially calm, but the words were laced with barbs. "You never understood what I gave up to be with you, the life I could have had, the people I left behind. You were comfortable, Jake. A pair of warm slippers I didn't realize would eventually make my skin crawl." My lawyer stood, objecting to relevance. The judge allowed her 30 more seconds. Rachel continued, her gaze locked on me. "You think this makes you the good guy. You think everyone in this room sees a betrayed husband who just wanted the truth. But what they really see is a man so terrified of being outshined. He spent 10 years burying a woman alive under expectations." She turned to the judge. "I'm not contesting the settlement. I don't want the house. I don't care about the money. But I want the record to show he wasn't a victim. He was the architect of this disaster." The room fell silent. I watched her carefully. No trembling. No tears. She'd rehearsed every word. And just as the judge asked her to step down, she turned back to me with a parting shot. "And Josh? You won't keep him forever. He'll grow up. He'll see the cracks. One day he'll come find me. Because deep down, he knows blood doesn't lie." That was her last line. Her final performance. The judge cleared his throat, scribbled something in his notes, and wrapped the session. Papers were signed. Orders filed. It was done. Outside the courthouse, the wind kicked up hard. I stood under the awning, holding the finalized divorce in my hand. A few stamped pages that now legally separated me from the storm I'd called a marriage. Josh didn't call her after the hearing. He didn't text her. He didn't ask to see her. We went home and ordered pizza. He queued up a movie. I didn't even realize I'd started crying until halfway through the opening scene. Not because I missed her, because I didn't, and that terrified me. In the weeks that followed, Rachel vanished from our lives like smoke from a fire that had finally run out of air. No contact, no appearances, no more games. But the ashes were still there. I'd lost time, trust, a version of myself I couldn't get back. But I'd also found something. Josh, who still rolls his eyes at me, still leaves socks everywhere, still won't admit when he's scared, started calling me Dad. He didn't say it like a declaration, just casually, naturally, like it had always been true, and maybe it had. So what did I learn? That love without truth is just a pretty disguise. That some people don't want peace, they want victory. And that if someone shows you who they are, don't try to redraw them into something softer. Believe it, walk away, and don't look back.